Shadows of Forbidden Gods is different. It's all about building the power of your evil god under the radar until it's too late for anyone to defeat you. You're an ancient, absolutely evil god preparing to return to the world, and can act almost exclusively through a handful of human agents. They must gain access to powerful people and corrupt or destroy them, removing any chance at resistance. Your agents will spread corruption across the world, along with curses and cults. People residing in sufficiently corrupted areas gradually lose their ability to fight or even notice anything's amiss. Much like Crusader Kings, the world is too big for you to keep track of everything, much less control it, and your most powerful plays are mostly those that grow beyond you and sustain or even spread themselves. You only have a handful of agents, a mere one at first, and each turn involves only a few straightforward decisions. Shadows of Forbidden Gods is a strong effort to simulate something original and unusual, and it's already colorful and entertaining enough to be worth your time. Old World is one of the best 4X games out there and provides an interesting mix of Civilization and Crusader Kings. Unfortunately, there are some performance issues with this game which hold it back to be one of the greatest 4X titles on the market. In the late game it can take up to 120 seconds until the AI is finished. While narrative events are nothing new in the strategy genre, and titles like Crusader Kings and Stellaris have refined the medium to fine art, it's uncommon to see a Civilization-like game with this storytelling. Each civilization draws from a pool of shared events and a set of civilization-specific events from real-world history. Titles with a heavy focus on narrative are one of the only genres where even losing can be enjoyable, with a greater emphasis on the journey rather than the destination. Surviving till turn 200 or going out with a blaze of glory after insulting the leader of your greatest rival is equally rewarding, with each step of your journey being just as important as the last. The combat in Old World is much faster, and armies need to be much larger due to sieges often taking multiple turns, and capturing a city, often resulting in upwards of a dozen counterattacks when facing off with powerful enemies. Playing Old World feels like you have an entire nation interacting deeply with other real civilizations covering a much smaller slice of history. It adds complexity and dimension to the 4X genre by taking the civilization template and adding to it to involve you in an epic story. Victoria 3 tasks you with building a nation by shaping its laws, economy, people, and institutions. The developers at Paradox call it a society builder. It wants you to care about the minutiae of political movements, distribution of power, population trends, economic organization, factory output, or global trade, and then to start manipulating them. It's in Victoria 3's simulation of how a society is governed where the game is at its best, drawing you deeper and deeper in. Victoria 3 has you serve as a kind of omniscient chief executive, deciding what new factories, mines, infrastructure, and farms get built. Victoria 3 economic system is a slick simulation that incentivizes real-world behaviors. Unfortunately, when it comes to international relations, the AI is static at best, unpredictable at worst. Victoria 3 is weak on the international stage, but if your fantasy is to take control of a nation and set your own goals, build your own society and play around with complex, interlocking systems, it will fulfill that brilliantly. The internal life of your nation is rich, and for much of the game that's where your focus will be. Terra Invicta is a deep, interesting, and engaging game that doesn't quite play like much else out there. One part of Terra Invicta is an engaging simulation of a world where secret coalitions manipulate its nations. The other part of it is a detailed simulation of human expansion into the solar system, including the militarization and industrialization of space, the likes of which I've never seen in a video game. You're not just managing the resistance on Earth like in XCOM, now you're charged with building it, and the flexibility you have over your methods, planning, and even goals is almost overwhelming. With an area of operation spreading out from Earth to cover the entire solar system, it's frankly impressive that Terra Invicta functions at all, and that it does so as well as it does is a truly stellar achievement. The space gameplay is cool on paper, but frustrating in practice, because by the time you actually start getting enough resources to move to space, you need to spend a lot of hours upfront. There are brilliant ideas in the ambitious early access release of Terra Invicta, and a lot of fun to find for strategy game enthusiasts, but you need to be willing to spend a lot of time with the mechanics. That can sometimes be really confusing. while Civilization V received 2 expansions that helped cement its legacy as one of the best strategy games ever made, Civilization VI hasn't hit quite the same heights. It's a wonderful strategy game, full of depth and nuance, oozing with character and a modern standard-bearer for the series' classic, one more turn addiction. It features charismatic world leaders, you explore a map, you develop technology. You expand the borders of an empire, you exterminate enemies, you let off some nukes, you go into space. It ticks every box on the Civilization checklist. The defining aspect of Civilization VI, the thing we will remember it for the most, is its district system. It's a huge part of the game, based around the idea that after you build a city, watching your borders spread like a virus in earlier games was one thing, but manually controlling archaeologists and artists and rock bands in the field is a blast. It's these areas, where the game asks you to get down on the ground and shape your civilization directly, that it's at its strongest. Civilization VI is overall a really good game and worth your time. After several years, 2 major updates and many additional leaders and cultures that are added to the game, it is finally finished and at its peak. Knights of Honor 2 is a real-time strategy game set during the Middle Ages. You choose from a world map similar to Crusader Kings, with every nation on the map available. In total, we have 200 different kingdoms from Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia to choose from. Knights of Honor 2 is a real-time strategy game that can be paused anytime. This strategy title leaves many options open to play the game. Whether we want to pull the strings in the background, lead the world with our trade power, or subjugate it militarily, the game allows for a variety of different approaches. The game world is built very extensively and corresponds to the historical borders in the change of the centuries. It puts typical 4X elements together with real-time strategy that feel and look like Age of Empires battles. Overall, Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign is a fun and well-made addition to the grand strategy market. It was always going to be tough to stand up to the leaders in that genre, but the game makes a good case for itself. With a few additional quality of life features over time, and hopefully more content moving forward, it can live up to its full potential and maybe even rise to the throne itself. Crusader Kings 3 is a simulation strategy game which any person who is interested in historical rulers would play for hours. The gameplay doesn't disappoint, with a clean layout of the world, relatively simple controls and a very nice design. Crusader Kings 3 is a sensational historically accurate strategy and simulation RPG. It is the type of game that once you figure out what you are doing, you can play for hours on end, battle and marrying your way into being a strong leader, either changing the events of the past by playing as an original king or queen, or by creating your very own character to take history by the scruff of its neck and grow your kingdom to its fullest. One area of criticism is that for wars, they could have added something a bit more interactive and visually enthralling as opposed to the progress bar style that they have opted for. Crusader Kings 3 is a superb strategy game, a great RPG, and a masterclass in how to take the best parts of existing systems and make them deeper and better. All of the engrossingly flawed characters and stories of love, war, triumph, and loss that can dynamically emerge feel like just to be so close to medieval history. In 2016, Paradox released the grand strategy Second World War game Hearts of Iron 4. Set in a world where war is the only thing you can really do, this grand strategy game asks players to manage the entire war effort, which means you're not only in charge of the actual fighting, but everything around it and everything leading up to it as well. This means you're responsible for the recruitment of troops, the construction of factories, trading for rare resources, infrastructure improvements, diplomacy, and the manufacturing of specific weapons and vehicles. Its campaigns, which can last for dozens of hours at a time, are never short on matters requiring your attention. This is a dense game, and is definitely not for everyone, especially if you're after things like nuanced diplomacy or more granular control over your armies in your strategy games. But if the prospect of controlling an entire war effort sounds amazing to you, no matter the human and mental cost of learning how to grapple with such a task, then this grand strategy game is for you. What sets Hearts of Iron 4 apart is the way those systems and settings all tie together to create a huge sense of accountability. Stellaris at its core is a narrative title, albeit one that is created by the player. whose interaction with the wider galaxy can influence the greater course of events, from galaxy-spanning empires that expand through war to small secluded galaxies that use diplomacy, technology and espionage to rule from the shadows. In Stellaris, there is no such thing as an invalid narrative, and players are free to play whatever role they wish in the grander scheme of things, even if that role is that of xenophobic fish people who wish to be left alone in their watery corner of the galaxy, while everyone else does their own thing. Unlike many games with similar systems, the origin of your empire can have a huge impact on how you play the game and interact with others, including starting the game as a vassal of a fallen empire, or with an allied sky dragon that feeds on the population of your capital in exchange for its protection. Stellaris, like Crusader Kings, is the type of game where you do not have to win to have a good time. Rather, players are free to exist as part of the galaxy and accumulate victories and defeats as they do so. Stellaris, like all Paradox games, has an abundance of DLC available, ranging from small cosmetic packs to larger expansion packs that add new mechanics or radically enhance base game mechanics to a new level. It offers players such a huge variety of content, and a massive list of faction types that completing the game in a traditional sense would take the average player well over 400 hours, which is a conservative estimate. Europa Universalis 4 is a complex strategy game from Paradox and lets you play a nation in the world. You can decide to take a European state, an Arab caliphate, or an Asian nation. Plus, if you want to increase the degree of challenge, you can choose an Indian tribe and conquer American lands. After deciding which country to start your adventure with, you will have to face a historical period from 1444 until 1821. For example, the European nations will undoubtedly be the most technologically advanced. However, the latter will always be at war and you will have to defend your borders. Describing all the gameplay mechanics of this game is nearly impossible. The gameplay is complex and immersive. You will have to take care of all aspects of the country you choose. As if that was not enough, you must protect the army, develop scientific technologies, and satisfy the needs of the people. Also, you will need to keep dissidents, your political opponents, and any heretics at bay. Europa Universalis 4 is one of the best strategy games ever made. I liked how the game leaves you an almost complete freedom of choice. There is never the right option, just like in real life. Every decision you make will have consequences, you'll have to live with them. So think twice before you take action.